Test. Thank you. We'll call to order the City Council meeting for Monday, January 6, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Amanda.
Mark Bittner,
Here.
Shannon Derby. Here. Bill Leclerc,
Here.
Doug Brandt,
Here.
Tim Petrie,
Here.
Bonnie Shimalunas. Here. Scott Steckmesser,
Here.
Adam Mahusky,
Here.
Darla Leclerc. Here. All present.
Thank you for that. On to 4, which we can skip over because everyone is here. On to number 5, public hearing. We have one tonight. Public hearing on proposed site and architectural plans for proposed planned unit development at 3000 Forest Avenue. It's a proposed 52 unit apartment development. Craig.
Okay. Yes, as the agenda noted, tonight is the time that has been set and duly noticed for a public hearing on the site and architectural plans for proposed planned unit development, a residential planned unit development at 3000 Forest Avenue. Most of us know that as the former Hanson the Florist site on Forest Ave. This property is currently zoned PUD, or planned unit development. There was a previously approved site and architectural plan that another developer had a few years ago. New owner now, who's purchased it from the Hanson family late in 2024. That owner is proposing 2 26-unit apartment buildings with 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, 52 units total. So it is necessary in order, if that development is to proceed, for a new site and architectural plan associated with the PUD zoning to be approved. This matter was reviewed by the Plan Commission at its December regular meeting. In fact, that was in joint session with the City Council. So City Council got some more background. I would emphasize tonight's hearing relates to the zoning approval for the proposed development. As you're aware, and a lot of folks in the audience are aware, there has been discussion of a development agreement and possible TIF assistance to this developer. There's a draft development agreement out to the developer for comment for about a month now. I expect we'll be getting feedback on that. That's a separate issue. The possible development financial assistance, separate issue that will come to City Council, I assume, at a date in the near future. Tonight is about the aspects of considering the site and architectural development plans for from a zoning standpoint. In your packets, the relevant materials start at packet page number 4. Your agenda does recommend approval of the site and architectural plans as recommended by the Plan Commission. I would just highlight before you start the public hearing, in addition to generally giving its blessing to the site and architectural plans, the Plan Commission did identify 2 specific conditions that they recommended be attached to this, and they're noted on page 5 of the packet. And that would be that there be written concurrence from the owner and tenant of the adjacent Dollar General store at 3022 Mishicot Road, that the site plan as approved by the Plan Commission is acceptable to each of those parties. There is a restrictive covenant that applies to this development site. It is effectively controlled by the owner, a gentleman in Connecticut who was the owner of the Dollar General property, which Dollar General leases back. So before any development happens, the city would want to make sure that this is square with the terms of that covenant. Secondly, as you will recall, and I can show in a minute here, there is a proposal, the proposed location of the public sidewalks to get them back away from the street. Right now, they're right behind the curb along, let's get it straight. That's Mishicot Road at that point, or Forest Avenue. I'm sorry. It's right about at the transition point. As shown, the sidewalks do meander into the private property. That's probably good from an aesthetic standpoint and a pedestrian safety standpoint, but the Plan Commission did recommend that there be permanent easements in a form acceptable to the city in order for that to happen, both to assure they're installed, but that they're also maintained at the expense of the developer, just like the sidewalks in front of anybody else's property. So not to be long-winded, but those were two specific recommendations by the Plan Commission in advancing this plan with a recommendation for approval. Council has pretty extensive excerpts from the site plan in your packets. I just pulled a couple up here that could be shared with folks in the audience. This one happens to be the landscape plan, but it does show the proposed location of the two 3-story buildings, 26 units each. As you're aware from the elevation shots, there are both first floor level garages and outside surface parking that together meet the off-street parking requirements for this. So with that as background, Mr. President, this is up for public hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Greg, for that. So this is a public hearing, so there will be 3 calls. If you wish to speak about this, about the site and architectural plans, please step up to the podium on your left. State your name and address for the record. Opening up the first call. Seeing no one, I will close the first call and open up the second call. See no one for second call, I will close the second call and open up the third and final call. See no one, I will close the third call, bring it back to council and looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Darrell. Second by, thank you, Bill. Any questions or council discussion? See none, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
Doug Brandt,
Aye.
Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas,
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister,
Aye.
Adam Mahusky,
Aye.
Darla Leclerc, Mark Bittner,
Aye.
all in favor.
Thank you for that. On to number 6, input from the public. If you wish to address the council about something that is on this agenda or perhaps a future agenda item, please step up to the podium on your left and state your name and address for the record. Please be aware that you have 3 minutes to address the council, which can be waived by the council president if warranted. The council may ask questions of you about the topic, but cannot discuss issues raised or make any decisions since the topic is not a posted agenda items. Issues raised may be referred to the city manager or city staff for research and possible further action. With that, input from the public. Seeing no one, we'll go on to number 7, council communications, letters and other communications from citizens. Yes, Adam.
I got 3 of them. I think we all got this one. It was a concern about a fence on Roosevelt, someone that was not in favor of that fence, I think as it relates to the old Quality State oil property.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make that noted for the record. I also received one that had a question on the credit card bill that appears in our packet. It just says credit card bill. It sounded like this person was just looking for maybe some more information. I know we don't get that detailed information from month to month when we see it, but that was something that someone did raise. And also I did receive a message from a person who lives by the Arboretum who says they weren't contacted as part of the last kind of discussion that happened. And they were more in favor of a buffer zone because they feel that they do have problems with other rodents, snakes, and so on and so forth. And what they meant kind of by a buffer zone was where they would have to cut back some of their grass and area between their property line and the property line of the Arboretum, if that makes sense. I know we had talked about that before with other properties in the city. Because if you have a big lot like that, how you don't have to cut up to the property line, and then there's some people that have problems with that. We discussed that.
Yeah, in the context of another property in town,
Yes.
because generally, unless it's turf grass,
Right.
Kentucky bluegrass, fescue, whatever is classed as turf grass, and it gets too high,
Yep.
or a noxious weed as recognized by the state of Wisconsin, we don't control natural vegetation. I know Adams relayed some citizen concerns on this in the past. I suppose, in certain instances, especially if there's, say, a conditional use required, the city could require a mowed buffer. I'm going from recollection, there was no such requirement with the Arboretum per se.
Yeah, I don't think there are any requirements, but we looked at possibly bringing it up at Plan Commission to see if we could do like a 10-foot buffer zone of something where they'd have to cut back, so at least it's not up to somebody's property line, and those rodents or other things that were filtering in within that high grass are kind of
Right.
getting off to other people's property, and they weren't really excited about it, and hoping that a buffer zone could kind of keep them back a little bit.
Good point, because even aside from the Arboretum, there are other vacant
Other
properties
areas,
within the city. So
yep, that have
um,
that problem.
we could make a note, probably a little soon for next Monday's
Yeah.
Plan Commission, but I
But-
think that would be appropriate.
Something on the radar.
If I might, just as, and I'm sorry, what was your first topic?
The first one was the concern about the fence on Roosevelt.
Oh,
They
yes,
weren't
yeah.
in favor of
Yeah,
that.
just as a point of information, because I have seen some feedback on that. I know council had gotten an email on that. There was a letter that went out from the zoning administrator in mid-December, I want to say in December, to the owner of that property, which is zoned industrial, where there is what appears to be a commercial or retail type business being operated. So there's both a zoning district issue, and then there's outdoor storage without screening of a good number of appliances. I can't speak to the condition of them, but a lot of them stored outside. So there were two issues that were identified. I haven't received, I don't know if zoning has any formal feedback on that. Obviously open to dialogue, but we have zoning codes and they're there for a reason. So but we also value people that are in business and want to work with them, but we need that dialogue. On the issue of credit card bills, all of the city departments have US Bank purchasing cards, actually debit cards, I guess would be a better term. The level of review for those bills is the same as for other city invoices. The backup detail for each purchase is to be provided to the department head. The department heads review and sign off on those. So that level of review, I would say, is the same as occurs for the bills that are listed on the agenda, for example, that identify a specific vendor.
And those are also coded, right?
In terms of coded.
As far as when it comes out of, if it's a budgeted item.
Oh, yes.
So it's, because that's what I referred back to with this person. I did tell them that it does go through the department head and it gets coded and it goes against their budget. So it's not just willy-nilly spending. It just
There's-
shows up that way and they had a concern. So I
Yeah,
wanted,
there's a summary sheet that
Yep.
that has the backup receipts attached to it. They're listed on the sheet. Account numbers are identified. And generally, the department head or me, in the case of a couple of the departments and my administrative assistant, generally a department head level person signs off on those expenses. And they are public record and they're available certainly to any council member or member of the public that want to see them. Frankly, there was a push quite a while, probably 20 years ago, for the city to get into purchase cards because we were cutting a lot of individual, very small checks through the finance department. But happy to further discuss that. I had not seen a communication to council on that, but we'd
it
be
was
happy.
it was just to me, but I can forward that.
Okay, sure. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful.
Anyone else? Council Communications. Yes, Tim.
I had someone come up with concerns about a slide at Vets Park by the boat launch over there, that either a segment is broken or cracked towards the bottom. So
It's broken. I'm waiting.
The Parks and Rec Director reports he's checked with the playground manufacturer. Is the piece of equipment still accessible? Is it a hazard currently?
Well, it should have been blocked off. If it's not blocked off, it needs to be. So.
Okay, so you follow up with
It's in
staff
the-
and
I'll follow.
make sure that we've blocked it off as well. Thank you, Tim.
Yes, Mark.
I had the same question that Adam brought up about credit cards, and I checked with finance and two department heads, and that's exactly what happens. Any credit card is issued by one of our employees or bills charged, they attach the receipt to the expense account, the department head reviews it and approves it. So it's a very thorough system, and we've got some great, honest employees, and it's working well.
Anyone else?
I have a
Go ahead.
person tell me that he lives near. a lot of trash in the river and trash is blowing all over the city. He's wondering if there city could offer as a container, as a cover on that, would keep stuff from blowing out.
I've seen social media comments regarding the recycling containers and the fact they don't have lids. We certainly can look into that. It's not going to change overnight. I don't know of too many cities that have covered recycling containers unless they have much larger containers like the wheeled containers, but not to say they don't exist, and we could do some more homework
Have
on it.
something the same size because all those containers
Aye.
Yeah.
forward.
And honestly, I've lived here for 30 years. If you pack your container prudently and are mindful of I'm not saying everybody does, and are mindful of the weather conditions, it doesn't need to be blowing all over the neighborhood. I'm not disputing that people are careless about that because it happens. Public Works Committee could take it up. I should add, because I'm aware there was some dialogue over the weekend on that. The Utilities Committee of City Council did take a pretty deep dive on our current trash and recycling collection arrangements in the fall of 2003, prior to bringing up a proposal, which was approved back to City Council for renewal and extension of the amendment, if you will, an extension of the contract with Manitowoc Disposal. So that there is a fair amount of discussion of record out there from the Utilities Committee. I don't remember who sat on that at the time, but then that matter came up to City Council. But not to dismiss the concerns. None of us wants to see trash blowing around the community, much less into our waterways.
Comment on.
Oh, yeah, yes.
That he's trying to get company that did calling him, no answers. He's been emailing him, no.
Okay. I've got a call into our designated rep from the assessing company in follow-up to 2 calls like that. I did hear back from someone today that got a call back on Friday from a message they had left. But we want to get something out there. Bonnie had brought this up at the last regular meeting, as I recall. I think it was the 16th. Because yes, you may encounter a voicemail system, but you should be getting a timely response. And I've had a couple of calls now where people didn't get that. So if you want to pass that along after the meeting, Bill, I can make sure that person gets contacted, and that we have a more clear understanding with our assessing contractor that that's simply part of their job.
Biggest thing was they agreed on a value of his house.
That's a bit of an issue. So he came to open book, I'm assuming, and had dialogue with them? Okay. If you want to look me up and provide me with that contact information after the meeting. None of us like hearing that, and that's not the kind of customer service we expect out of any contractor with the city.
Bonnie, did you have something?
When he was talking about recycling, you are not supposed to go through people's recycling containers looking for stuff. And I don't
That
think that
happens.
helps either.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Yeah.
Just thought
Yeah, thou shalt not add to their recyclables or their trash placed at curbside, and thou shalt not remove, and yeah.
Well, I had the problem where people were loading mine up.
Loading yours up.
Well, then they just had it sitting on top. So then I kind of had to stop putting it out overnight. And
Wow.
leave it, put it right before they came to pick it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes, Doug.
I just want to make a comment on that. I know in our neighborhood, when the cardboard collection truck goes through, they'll combine the neighbors. So they only have to go down one side of the street. So they may take your neighbors and dump it into yours, and they come very early in our neighborhood. But I've seen them do it. They'll take them and just dump them together. So they only have to have one stop, and they're more efficient on that side. So that's a possible explanation to people adding.
And except for cardboard, I believe all the other recyclables are commingled presently. So.
Okay, anyone else? See nothing else. On to number 8, council reports from boards, commissions, or committees. Mark?
I have 2 reports. So first, the room tax met last week. We approved the budget for next year, the advertising expenses. We have, looks like we're going to end the year with a very successful room tax collection. We budgeted 302, and actually we're going to be 332,000 in collections of room revenue. So we've had a very successful year, and that's unlike most cities in Wisconsin, I'm told, where they have not had that kind of response. We also talked about the overpayment by Bateman, and as a room tax committee, it's been proven legitimate by Finance's investigation, and we have the funds to actually support the entire overpayment by Bateman, and without using room tax. And I believe Greg's going to show us a spreadsheet that shows we could use the excess fund available revenue in room tax without violating any of the statutory regulations about the split 70-30 from the general fund. So we can cover the entire amount of the overpayment without violating our. The second, we had a committee on the aging, and I just want to share a couple of things with the community. The trust car this past year has delivered over 3,900 rides to citizens in our community. The visitor center had over 11,000 visits from community individuals into the visitor center. They delivered over 17,000 meals to individuals in our community, and we had over 13,665 volunteer hours that the community of Two Rivers citizens volunteered to work in the senior center. So thank you to all the volunteers for that.
Excellent. Anything else? Darla?
EAB, not much to report. Main Street, we are going to be getting some new officers on the board. We have some people who unfortunately are leaving because they have reached the end of their term. So we'll have some fresh blood. One thing I wanted to say about Main Street is that over time, we're losing volunteers. So if anybody in the public would like to do something pertaining to the city and give some hours and give of themselves, Main Street is a really great way to do it because we do all the events and it's a lot of fun if you're volunteering for like a festival. So contact us, we need people.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. See nothing else, we'll go on to number 9, city manager's report. Greg?
The snowy shot of Neshota Beach, I think it's all melted by now, or maybe it's iced over from this morning. By the way, kudos, I think Public Works did a pretty good job getting out this morning for that unexpected glaze that hit the community about 6 o'clock. I recognized it as I slid partway into an intersection. So, and by way of update, on the staffing front, we've talked before about for police clerk and evidence technician. Those interviews have been completed. Finalist candidates have been identified, and there's some dialogue going on with finalist candidates now. City manager, kind of old news there, but the Surge Consultant Public Administration Public Administration Associates, PAA, will engage with the Recruitment Selection Committee 7 p.m. We've got confirmation that all 4 committee members are available for 3 for personnel and finance, 4 for city manager recruitment and selection. And that discussion with Kevin Brunner of PAA will be a teleconference at 7, of course, open to the public. City planner, community development director, we're still accepting applications. Do have some interviews getting set up through our city clerk, finance director. We've got some new interest in the position, which is good to report. City council election, of course, is coming up on April 1st. The deadline for interested candidates to submit their papers is 5 p.m. tomorrow, January 7. As of today, 3 candidates have filed nomination papers that have been reviewed and approved by the clerk as meeting requirements for placement on the April ballot. Those are Jeff Dahlke, Scott Steckmesser, Andre Robitaille. Papers were also filed today by incumbent council members Bill Leclerc and Tim Petrie. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, those are still under review for completeness?
Yep, they're almost done.
Almost done. Yep. They'll be done this evening, especially if we get out of here at a reasonable hour. So that doesn't mean there can't still be more, because the deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. at the city clerk's office. Bear in mind, the only reason there would be a February primary, which is always a possibility, is if there are more than 6 candidates, which generally be 7 or more. If there are more than twice the number of vacancies coming up in the next election. So that's an update as to interest in the April election. Absentee ballot requests for this year, which is not a big year for elections, but Amanda, is there anything besides April right now that we know of? No. Okay. Do you want to speak to this? There is the ability each year to file, I think at the beginning of the year, standing requests for absentee ballots.
Yep, so all calendar year requests expire December 31st. So anybody last year that had calendar year would have to re-request absentee ballots to be mailed to them. And to do that, you can either go online to myvote.wi.gov, or you can mail in the request form, and we can only accept them in person within 2 weeks of an election. So
that's an update there. And again, this is very much an off year for elections, other than the very important local election in April. We haven't seen a lot of it this year, but just that reminder again that snow and ice need to be removed from any public sidewalk within 24 hours from the time snow ceases to fall. That is, if there's a discernible end to a snow event. We have had some recent staff discussion on this, and starting with any snow events in the new year, we do plan on both the city's website and Facebook page to note this requirement and note officially when the end of the most recent snow event was. Oftentimes, our community service officer contacts property owners and gives them 24 hours notice from that point. However, we have occasions like on the weekend, we got that storm right before Christmas, and we knew that people were past their deadline late in the day, Friday of the weekend before Christmas. So I did intervene that weekend, the following Monday. Yes, the following Monday. And directed Public Works to get out there, and if there were sidewalks in violation, especially in the downtown, to clean them. Because while that advance personal notice is nice, the ordinance says 24 hours after it stops snowing. Again, the goal isn't to realize revenue from enforcement activities, it's to get people to cooperate. I'm not going to say the city did the best job. That snow fell around the weekend over the holidays. We need to do a good job of that. We also need to remind everybody, and that includes a fair number of downtown businesses, of the ordinance requirement to clear to the bottom of the ramps, not just to make a 90-degree turn at the corner and leave the Alps for pedestrians to deal with. So just a reminder there. And also, it is an ordinance prohibition to shovel or blow snow into the street, as pretty as that arc of snow coming out of your errands might look, or onto a neighboring property owner, at least without that owner's permission. We're all good neighbors, so hopefully that works out. The winter parking ban enforcement remains in abeyance given the weather conditions. Watch City Hall and Two Police Department Facebook pages for any updates, but working to keep that at a minimum. I think last winter we had a total of 10 or fewer days that the ban was on, and let's hope we have that again this year. This week is the week for curbside collection of Christmas trees. If you use a natural Christmas tree, don't put your artificial one out unless you got stickers, but free collection of live Christmas trees is going on this week on the same day as regular garbage or recycling collection in your neighborhood. If that doesn't work out so well for you, or maybe you missed it already, Christmas trees can also be dropped off down at the Public Works garage from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. No artificial trees, bags, tinsel, any of that good stuff. Artificial or contaminated trees, again, must be stickered. no other yard waste or brush. So yeah, the shrubs from in front of your house cannot be disguised as a Christmas tree and put it curbside. We'll put that reminder out on Facebook. We should have done it today. We'll do it tonight. Lead water service lateral replacement, the activity under the current contract, which extends 2024 into 2025, is pretty much ground to a halt given the weather conditions. As of year end, we stood at 74 public water services replaced, 51 public sewer laterals that in the right of way replaced, 13 private water services, and 9 private sewer laterals. This total contract, Matt, is a couple hundred altogether? 300 public, 200 private. I get that backwards? Okay. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. That has to be completed, especially because it's being funded in part by ARPA dollars by the end of next year. But the dollars are encumbered. The work is underway. And I don't know that it would break anybody's heart that there's no more streets being dug up through the winter, because that's just tough. So that's suspended due to weather. You might have wondered out on Forest Avenue, there was excavation, and while we had that brief warm up, the city's public works crews quickly got a patch in place. No surprise, probably was due to a leaking water service. We typically have probably 8 or 10 of those a year that simply fail. So that's on hold. I'm going to report later on the agenda under intergovernmental update. We did get those 2 agreements signed with the county, delivered timely to the county. I'm told on their way back with signatures from the county. We still need to address any possible amendments to those. We have been told no on being able to apply our interest earnings on the ARPA funds, which have to be spent by the city on ARPA eligible activities, but that the county's not willing to consider those as match. We do have a couple of the previously approved ARPA contracts where we're going to underspend what was estimated. We have asked, because those funds were committed, that if we're underspending those, that if you will, the carryover be applied to the new scattered site contract, where not the entirety of that contract is being funded with ARPA. So we're awaiting an answer from the county on that. Sandy Bay Highlands, the conservation subdivision over on the east side of town, phase 3, which will open up 26 new lots for single family homes. All of the water and sewer mains for the entirety of the project, as authorized by city council, have now been installed under the street right of way. As soon as they have positive, or I guess negative, bacteriological testing results from the water main testing, they will be starting on the laterals stubbed up to each of the lots. If you go over, if you haven't been over there, I encourage you to go over. The gravel street is drivable on Orchard Lane from Lake Breeze north to Raleigh Court, and then west for the length of Raleigh Court. You can join the sidewalk superintendent crew there, or just check out the lots that are available. Phase 3 lots are now officially listed with Amy Townsend of Stark Real Estate. That listing is through March per the direction of the CDA, Community Development Authority, which has ownership of the lots. We are going to be getting an RFP, request for proposals, out for Realtor Services to review that contract for an effective date of April 1st. In the meantime, the first offer, yes, a full price offer at $74,900 for one of the cul-de-sac lots on Raleigh Court, has been received and accepted, and that's set to close later this month. Also, the spec home at the corner of Lake Breeze and Sandy Ridge, built by Fresh Coast Construction. That sale did close on, I believe, December 31. So the CDA received the $32,000 deferred purchase price on that lot as well. So good start to 2025, sorry, at the Sandy Bay subdivision. Community and economic development, I'm not going to spend much time on number 1. The zoning issue on number 1, the proposed development of 3,000 Forest, taken care of. Hoping for the best, but I just emphasize zoning action by the city doesn't necessarily mean a project is going to happen. And this developer has indicated that This project is contingent on TIF assistance. I hope to be able to give an update on this ASAP because we hear loud and clear this community needs new market rate apartments. So as soon as we have some feedback, I'll share that with council. I had shared on Facebook and with emails to, I think, council and the CDA. We did close on December 30th on the sale of 2.5 acres out at the Woodland Industrial Park. That was a sale authorized by the CDA earlier this year to Driver Solutions, Inc., doing business as Rush Logistics out of Manitowoc. They're currently in leased space on the south side of Manitowoc. Logistics and less than full load shipping specialists with about 25 employees. They're planning to break ground and build a 6,000 square foot facility on Browns Drive, just north of the new Braun Building Truss plant in 2025, this year, out at the industrial park. Construction continues downtown on projects at Sophie's Automotive and the Violet Inn. Both of those are getting some assistance, as you know, from City TID number 12. And construction activity has begun at the BP convenience store by the Madison Street Bridge. That's totally private project, but adding about 1,200 square feet there for some manner of restaurant fast food offerings. Initially, I know the discussion was the Spices Indian restaurant, a small carryout dine-in operation, much like the one on North Rapids Road, which the same gentleman owns. I'm not entirely sure of the tenant right now or the food offerings because he has also purchased, and we're told, plans to renovate the old M&M restaurant for a larger iteration of the Spices here in Two Rivers. Good news is there's construction happening, and we're excited about that. I know I've said it before, but I want to say it again. Thank you to everybody involved in decorating the downtown for Christmas. Our downtown was amazing, and we heard a lot of comments from residents and visitors all through the season. First and foremost, the merchants downtown, the property owners that decorated their properties at the urging of Main Street and others. Parks and Rec as the stewards of Central Park East and West. Central Park West looked beautiful. Central Park East this year was a new activity with the holiday tree decorating, Christmas tree decorating in front of City Hall. 30 wonderful fresh cut trees donated by Sprangs, and 30 sturdy bases fabricated by the folks at Lowe's as part of their donation for the event. And then again, the roughly 30, might have been 28 going into the deadline, businesses and individuals that decorated the downtown park. And of course, lest we forget, it was about 4 years ago, we completed fundraising for what then were the brand new banners and downtown garlands and wreaths that are up and down the street there. City Hall, per last year's capital budget, we replaced the 30-year-old wreaths on the front of the building that were kind of falling apart. Downtown looked great. Kudos to all of the city staff involved, Parks and Rec, Utilities, Public Works, great outpouring of community support, and it's just going to get better year by year. So thank you to everybody there. Some more very interesting programming coming up, courtesy of the Environmental Advisory Board. Our friend Titus Seilheimer from Wisconsin Sea Grant will be presenting this week, Thursday evening. You can't make it if you're on Personnel and Finance or the City Manager Selection Committee, darn it. But 6 o'clock over at Leicester Public Library, Great Lakes Fishes, Conservation Management, and Recipes, maybe with a side of tartar sauce, not sure. But 6 o'clock down by the fireplace at the library. Thank you to the EAB for organizing that.
I just want to say that Titus is really passionate about his recipes.
Ah.
So, yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff.
It's
to
probably
share.
much more highbrow than tartar sauce, but I've always got to have some tartar sauce on the side.
Butter.
Titus is amazing. He spends a lot of time accompanying the folks from Suzy Q out on the trawl on the big lake, and just is an incredible source of information on Great Lakes fisheries. Very good stuff. Woodland Dunes Nature Center has a program January 11. Wild Wanderers Animal Homes. That's from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. You got to register in advance, and there's some contact information. This and a lot of other great events you can find out on the Explore Two Rivers website. Friends of the Senior Center have Cork and Canvas January 16 over at the Community House. Your artwork might look as beautiful as what you see there. And if not, after another glass of wine, it looks really good. So that's a great opportunity for some fellowship and for creative endeavors. So I think we might even know some of the folks in the photos there. Good stuff. Tonight on the agenda, you may have noticed, or if you went online, the highlighted blue reference numbers. While we'll continue to array our agendas in traditional outline form with 5, or like under 9, A, B, C, et cetera, there will be, if you go online, links by document number, because we do ultimately organize documents each year with document numbers. They've never appeared on the agenda. Just makes sense that they do. And also, starting with, I believe, the minutes from tonight's meeting, we'll be utilizing the feature of our software that allows for council videos once the minutes are prepared to be time-stamped on the website. Help me out here, Amanda. I know you and Val have been working on this, but basically if you go to the minutes, this box is on the side and provides a link to the video.
Correct. So you can click on what item that you want to view, and then it will take you to that exact spot in the video.
Couple of improvements there. The system wasn't, I think there's a work order in on the numbering because it was a little problematic tonight, but a couple of improvements that hopefully make searching and accessing items easier for residents and council. So with that, that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, on to C, legislative
Oh
intergovernmental
yeah,
update.
thank you. I usually skip over that. I'm sorry. I should have had a slide on this. There is, thank you, Mr. President. There is in your packets a copy of a position statement issued mid-December by the American Water Works Association. Andrew and I have talked about this a bit, our water superintendent. Even though I think there's probably universal agreement that getting the lead out of our water systems is important, AWWA, as the interest group for public water utilities, the American Water Works Association, has filed a petition for review of the so-called lead and copper rule improvements in the Federal Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. They cite concerns about the rule's approach to lead service lines on private property and making public water systems responsible to replace lead service lines and galvanized lines when they control those lines. Now here, our ordinance does provide ultimately for the ability to disconnect service if a property owner does not cooperate, but I don't fully understand this. I think some of the concern here is just how far onto private property do you then go? We end at the meter now. There's also private plumbing that might have lead or lead components in it. And then I think for everybody out there with older water systems that have lead laterals, the second bullet point, the AWWA notes that the lead and copper rule improvement poses significant affordability challenges. They note for households that struggle to pay for essential needs, they show a nationwide cost of over $100 billion, and a lot of those are going to fall to consumers. Now, here it says through higher water bills, Two Rivers has adopted not to build that into our rate base, which would require Public Service Commission approval. But that affordability is a concern. You as council know we've been doing our darndest to access principal forgiveness dollars from federal and state sources to offset the property owner cost. In the case of this current scattered site contract, the city has authorized general obligation borrowing, tax-supported borrowing, to help assure continuation of that $2,500 grant per homeowner. We want to do our level best to continue that, but long-term, that is a concern. That's a very real concern. And a statement that the requirement to replace every lead service line, including galvanized lines, by 2037 is not feasible in light of some of those legal, logistical, and financial challenges. Now, this isn't saying that Two Rivers in any way is dampening its zeal for pursuing this, especially this has the effect of law right now, the LCRI. But I think it is worth noting that there's some pushback happening at a national level from a public water interest group. because this is big dollars, very big dollars. So just wanted to share that. Council may want to weigh in on that in the future. We've got a new administration coming in. There may be some differing perspectives on the urgency of this or how we, the big we, collectively pay for it. So, and then as I mentioned earlier, we have inked the 2 ARPA funding agreements with the county, with the dollar amounts that were in front of you when they were approved back on the 16th of December. We are working, however, have requested from County Corp Council and their finance director the ability to amend those contracts and earlier contracts to shift some funding where we'll be underspending our ARPA dollars in those existing contracts. We'll see. We've at least locked in the dollars that were in front of you. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Greg, for that. On to number 4, consent agenda. Under A, we have presentation of minutes. We have 2. One is from the City Council regular meeting from December 16th, 2024. The other is a City Council special meeting from December 23rd, 2024. The recommended action is a motion to waive reading and adopt the minutes. Under B, we have minutes of meeting from the Business and Industrial Development Committee and Community Development Authority from December 27th, 2024. The recommended action will be a motion to receive and file. Under C, we have applications and petitions. There are 2. The first one is an application for temporary Class B wine license for Friends of the Two Rivers Senior Center for Cork and Canvas event, January 16th, 2025, from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Two Rivers Senior Center. And under 2, we have an application for a temporary Class B beer license for Knights of Columbus Council 1957 for our annual Knights of Columbus Cornhole Tournament event, February 1st, 2025, from 7:30 a.m. to 5:00 p.m. at the J.E. Hamilton Community House. The recommended action is a motion to approve the application and authorize issuance of the license. Under D, we have summary of verified bills for the month of December 2024 for $622,317. The recommended action will be a motion to receive and file. The recommended action for the entire consent agenda will be a motion to approve the consent agenda with the various actions recommended. Thank you, Bill. Second by Adam. Any council discussion? See none, this will be an all in favor. So all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. On to City Council formal items. Under A, we have amendment to agreement for sale of real estate with Why Not LLC pertaining to the property at 2023 Washington Street.
Okay. You have in your packet, starting at page 70 of the packet, information on the proposed amendment. There's some background. There's the proposed amendment document, which has 2 exhibits to it. Exhibit A is the existing property purchase or property sale agreement, and Exhibit B is a proposed right of first refusal. It's also addressed in the amendment. Just some of the, I guess I'd say some of the older history on this long vacant property. Did have a vacant building on it for a long time. Sorry. At 20, sorry. Also a spam. Okay. The city acquired from Manitowoc County, the county's foreclosure rights to this property in 2020 under a so-called 75106 agreement, section 75106 agreement. That references a section of DNR regs, I believe, that allows local units of government to acquire properties, specifically brownfield properties, which most old gas stations and C-stores are. There was a record of leaky storage tanks here, which had been closed out with DNR. But the county essentially can, with cooperation of the county, which is the governmental entity that can take properties, title to properties for delinquent back taxes, the city entered into an agreement with the DNR, which meant the city could acquire the property with the local governmental unit liability exemptions under state law, entered into an agreement, took title to the property that was granted by the courts in April of 2020. City acquired the property for the specific purpose of redevelopment. It had sat vacant for about 10 years. County can take property after 3 years of tax delinquency, but Manitowoc County, I think, fairly conservative on this, typically has not taken title to properties where there's any history of contamination, state laws and exemptions notwithstanding. The city, in hard dollars, probably about $4,000 into this property because we paid for a phase 1 environmental site assessment and a filing fee to DNR related to the 75-106 agreement. The property was offered for sale by the city for the balance of 2020. And looking back at the files, it looks like we had an agreement with Berkshire Hathaway for most of the year of 2021 that expired in early 2022. Along the way, the city did enter into a sale agreement with a private party, a different private party than the one that we're talking about tonight. In July of 21, that buyer withdrew in November 2021, and the city council authorized a refund of the $5,000 deposit that purchaser had placed on the property. The city then issued a request for proposals in December of 2021, seeking redevelopment proposals. I had misstated in an earlier report on this. There were in fact 2 proposals received. The council reviewed those in February of 2022 and selected the Wine Knot proposal. The original agreement in question that's up for your consideration for an amendment tonight was signed in April of 2022. That agreement provided a requirement that the new owners of the property develop a plan for commercial redevelopment of the property, get that plan approved by the Plan Commission within 6 months, I believe, of taking ownership. And it also set deadlines for completing an investment of at least $100,000 in the property and sharing back with City Council documentation of that investment. That deadline for completion was extended twice by action of the City Council. First, from end of December of 2023, and then a subsequent action of the council in September of 2023 extended the completion deadline to July 31st of 24, the deadline for showing proof of investing at least $100,000. That's just meant to be a bit of background. What you've got in front of you tonight is an amendment that would make changes, which I believe are consistent with our discussion with City Council in closed session back in November 4th and direction by the council at the meeting on November 18. That's those key terms are identified on page 73 of the agenda. And then you have the amendment starting at page 74 of the agenda. I do have 2 changes I want to talk to you about from what went out in your packets Friday, starting on page 75 of the packet. Paragraph 3 near the bottom of the page. This is where we talk about documentation submitted by the buyer and the city acknowledging that the buyer has invested a certain sum towards satisfaction of the investment requirements. What went out Friday cited $48,271.81. When over the weekend, developer provided numbers and the documentation requested. They pointed out that they had one additional bill from Vision Architecture, which brings the total to a revised amount of $49,816.71. That's reflected on one of the sheets I handed out tonight. That lists the expense documentation that was submitted by Wine Knot LLC. I'm just going to run through it quickly. There were invoices and canceled checks from Vision Architecture in totaling the amount shown. A canceled check from Larson Engineering in the amount shown. I have requested a copy of the invoice for that. The canceled check came in, the invoice didn't. That's why there's no X there. Permits from the city of Two Rivers, including a building permit for full construction of the project, which didn't happen. Dumpster rental from GFL Environmental, that one again, evidence of payment, but I've requested a copy of the bill because it was not in what I got. Asbestos testing by a company called Environmental Management. There was an invoice and copy of the bill of the canceled check there. Asbestos removal by Advanced Asbestos Removal, documented with an invoice and a canceled check. And then partial demo and then completion of demolition of the building by Tower Excavating, and that was documented with 2 invoices and canceled checks. The developers at Wine Nut are also requesting that under the allowed amount here in the contract, in the amendment, they be allowed to recoup the purchase price of the property, which was $10,000. They are not eligible per the development agreement to claim any costs for work done by any contractors controlled by the members of Wine Nut. Mr. Cron, I know, has Fresh Coast Construction. He's in the construction business. Now, when it comes to the development agreement, it did say that the $100,000 investment requirement did not include the purchase price of the property. So I guess that's a judgment call. Here, the scenarios, they would propose to try to sell the property and include recouping the $10,000 that was paid to the city and these documented costs, which I don't know that that was anticipated when we entered into it, because we were just saying the only costs that count toward the improvement budget are, those don't include the 10,000. So I'll point that out to council. The amendment to the agreement would basically provide forgiveness of the requirement to pay the city the difference between the documented costs and $100,000, would give the developers until the end of this year to either sell or redevelop the property. The terms are that if they were to sell the property, they could recoup up to the dollar amount of these documented costs, in this case, $49,816.71, as an offset to their expenses. Any sale proceeds above that would have to be split with the city, $2 to the city for every $1 retained by the developer. And then in addition, we reference a right of first refusal on the property, whereby the city would have the right, would be notified of any proposed sale of the property and would have a right of first refusal to match that offer if it wanted to. And I did have corrections to the Exhibit B right of first refusal, which is this with gray highlighting that I handed out to you tonight. Those were primarily in the area of what the city's rights are to respond on the right of first refusal. And we've got Andrew on the phone with us, right, our city attorney, because I just sent this off to him this afternoon. But basically, under A, and this was in what went out with your packets, if the grantor desires to sell the property at any time during the term of this amendment, the city, the grantee, has a right of first refusal to purchase the property. The city has to get notice with a copy of the proposed offer. The city would then have the right, not until midnight, but to be more specific, until 11:59 p.m. on the date that is 10 days after the grantee's receipt of notice on such an offer. So the city gets notice, city has 10 days to reply. And if the city wishes, it can match that offer. Not saying we'd want to, but say there was an offer for $11,000, a future council might want to look at that. Secondly, or on B on page 2, that didn't change from what went out with your packets. And that is if the buyer hasn't sold the property by the end of 2025, December 31, 2025, the grantee, the city, would have a right of first refusal. Would have an option. Help me out, Andrew. That should say option to purchase the property.
Sorry, I feel like I missed.
We're on B on page 2 of the handout.
Right, yes. So it could say option. Our ROFR in this instance works in the same way.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was maybe being too picky there. To purchase the property, get a copy of the offer. And I'm sorry, the city basically would have a right for the month of January of 2026 to say, you know what, you didn't sell it, we wish to purchase it. May not want to do that, but it would be a right. And then Weston Dunn had added C, which related to possible gifting of the property by Wine Not. If that were to occur, there would likewise be the need for notice to the city. The city would have 10 days to respond. And if the city wished to, in that instance, there would still be that right to repurchase the property for $10,000. What went out to you with your packets had some earlier language, my mistake, that got left in there that referenced the assessed value of the property. Not interested in the assessed value of the property, it would be for the $10,000. So I hope that makes sense. These are the two additional pieces of information. Breakdown on the proposed authorized costs incurred relative to the property and the modifications to that right of first refusal that is Exhibit B to the agreement. If the council approves this evening, I'd also say that ought to be contingent on those two remaining invoices being provided, which I'm sure are available for additional backup on the expenses. I think that's everything. I would point out the city council, make no mistake, has an existing agreement that would give you the ability to require payment of the delta between about $40,000 and 100 that was not spent on the property, and to require conveyance of the property back to the city. That has not been the preference expressed by council in the last two meetings where we've reviewed this.
Any questions for Greg before council? Yes, Adam.
I just want to make sure that when it talks about plan.
I didn't bring that with me, but I can get you an answer to that real quick. Yeah.
Now we're on. Yeah, after spoke. Not if it's before. I thought they had some design work done prior to.
I can only give you the dates of the invoices. They don't break down the date the work was done. And bear in mind, again, we signed the agreement April 28th of 2022. I think closing on the property was early May. The invoices, excuse me, so the invoices are dated, well, May 13, 2022. The agreement was signed April 28. I don't think they closed until a couple of weeks later. So the invoices, again, from Vision Architecture, May 13 of 2022. May 23 of 2023. July 13 of 2023. I'm sorry, I'm out of order still, but November 3rd of 2022. So they were all
Possibility of one, I guess, depending on when they did the work. I was just curious to see if some of that was done prior to.
Yeah.
When they were looking to get this done and bidding for it, not that we're.
And I guess would the relevant date then be the date of, council approved this in February. We
Right.
waited for about 2 months to get a clarification letter from the DNR that the city's involvement with the that agreement ended and confirmation that the liability exemption under that agreement indeed did not carry to the private developer, which it doesn't. So,
Okay, I don't know that I like the plan and design for a building that's not being put up to be recouped. I don't know. That's my feeling. I mean, the other stuff looks good, but
I don't see anybody using that plans.
I
Why
think
should
they,
we pay for that?
you know what, if you want to have a face-to-face with the developers, I'm fine with that. I'm not here to argue their case.
Well, if they sell it though,
I
In
think at the
excess to the-
time, those were deemed eligible expenses for the redevelopment.
and if they sell it in excess of this amount that they're suggesting, we would get up to anything, there's that amount. The cost would be covered by the sale price too.
yep, but I just didn't know that that should be included.
That's and I'm not here to make that argument.
I think the question is, should the $10,000? I mean, that is a 49, doesn't include the 10,000. First,
Right, what's presented, it's
Oh,
included.
total
If you're
value,
raising
okay.
that question, that's.
Well, they're selling the property though, so I would say the 10,000 should be eligible because we're looking at it
Okay,
for
okay.
if they sell it and they bought the property for 10, so I think that should be included, in my opinion.
I sort of stumbled on that one too when,
At first I did until you explained it.
Yeah.
Because this is not going against their 100,000 because they're not really moving forward. So in that case, it should be included because if they sell it, it should be included because they technically bought it. And they should recoup what they paid for in buying the property that they're ultimately selling. I just don't know about that vision and architecture. I'm kind of hung a little bit.
How much was that first invoice? Do you know offhand?
the earliest of those.
The one that was
invoices.
in May of 2022?
60. May 13th, 2022, $750. May 23rd of I'm sorry, never mind.
Is there just the one in 2022? Sorry. I thought there was two.
I'm hearing questions about design, period, or that.
Yes, just the
or that
design for the
earliest
vision
design
architecture.
bill.
Yeah.
Clearly part of the project, and speed reading through the original agreement, there's nothing in there that says expenditures are not included or excluded. Really an expense part of the project. I mean, you can't make a proposal without a design concept necessity to a project to go forward. So I think it should be included.
Any other questions for Greg? Otherwise, we'll need a motion for us to talk amongst ourselves. But if you have a question for Greg, go ahead, Bonnie. Or
Yeah, I guess I do. Are they, are we voting on to present this to them and then they make a decision if they want to agree with this? Because if they're not going to be doing anything with it, why are we going through all of this? Why don't we just buy it back?
That certainly is an option for I can tell you, yes, this I provided at the end of last week to the Why Not folks. It went out to council late Friday afternoon. It went out to them Friday night. And they have indicated they would like to list the property as soon as possible.
Oh, so they will try to sell it at
That's what
least?
they've represented.
Okay.
That's what they've told me. I'm not their representative here.
No, I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't mean it
No, you
to
didn't.
do that,
You
but
didn't, I know.
yeah, okay.
any other questions for Greg? Otherwise, we'll need a motion to talk amongst ourselves. Yes, Tim.
I'll make a motion. Discuss this.
Basically to approve it or not approve it or?
Say to approve it just so that we can discuss it.
So motion by Tim to approve it. Do we have a second? Thank you, Bill. Council discussion.
Helped out all the other.
Yes, Tim.
Would this open back up the contaminated soil stuff?
DNR, my basic understanding, DNR closed out the site and no further remedial action is required unless somebody would be getting down to the level. And I don't ask me an exact amount, but it was 4 or 5 feet at least below surface where they would encounter the contaminated soil, is my understanding. Then they'd have to manage it, dispose of it off-site.
Their original plan, they were gonna do a floating slab, which would only go down 2 feet so that they wouldn't get.
Correct. And that was not of concern to them as developer. And I know the one other party that gave a proposal to the city, we as staff set up a conference call with DNR Brownfields people on it. And that's, I'm going from memory, but that's essentially what we heard as well. Shouldn't be of concern unless you're going to be digging down, say for traditional footings or something at depth. Then if you encounter contaminated soil, it's got to be dealt with.
But now we have the issue that it's non-conforming.
There is a zoning issue there because the existing building was just with maybe 2 feet off the property line, mighty close, let's put it that way. And now I believe it's a 25-foot rear yard setback that applies in the B1 business district. So that complicates the site, which is only 60 feet deep. There's not a front yard setback in the downtown. You don't see a lot of people building new zero setback buildings. It has 150 feet of frontage on Washington, as I recall, by 60 feet of depth.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I do just want to make sure we clarify that that first bill was not for their proposal. Obviously, we didn't reimburse anyone for their other proposal when we received 2 proposals. I just want to make sure that that wasn't part of their work prior to getting the property, if that makes sense.
And I see that bill.
And I don't know if it states or how
And
clear it is.
If that's an issue, we can certainly look into that. The bill references, there aren't that many pages here, but that was a $750 bill, and it references completion of
Design proposal.
May 13, 2022, balance of design agreement, $750. I don't see an earlier invoice, so I don't know what that's referencing. So, again, if you wanted to attach a condition that relates to confirming when those services were provided and that it would have to be before a certain date, follow up on that.
It would be the start date. Service. Like if they talked to Vision Architecture back in January, and they got the ball rolling then.
Well, the council looked at a proposal. Sounds like, I think what Adam was speaking to is maybe there needs to be a date that it's only costs that were incurred, for example, after the council approved a proposal, which was on some
Right.
date in February
Yep.
of 22. And if not, it would be excluded from the
Right.
eligible expenses.
Right.
It's a reasonable of them. Or I think there's some advantages. Sale, because of environmental issues or complications, does occur, it's in their hands, not the cities.
Right.
Did clean up what was kind of an eyesore on Main Street. So if we want to set that date, I think that's fair. And move forward with the concept that way.
Yeah, I can just, and I'm sorry, I didn't reproduce these because I at least thought the checks probably shouldn't be distributed, but I'm happy to provide copies of the invoices. Each of them references a project number and simply Washington Street, Two Rivers. But the oldest one, or the one with the earliest date, is dated May 13, which was right about when we closed on the property. The council had authorized the agreement back in February. So what, if there's a relevant date you want to cite there, or if you want to put this on the table and get those answers, either way.
I mean, I think if we put it on record, you can reference it and either it's a go or it's not. I just don't want to pay for renderings that they were proposing to us to try to buy it in the first place.
Yeah, I don't remember what all was part of the package, but I know
Right.
when the council got that proposal, it identified tenants and an end
Right.
users.
Yeah, so that there were drawings done, and I just don't want to pay for drawings done as they made a pitch to buy the property.
How are you paying?
Hmm?
You're not, no money's coming out of your pocket for that. How are you paying for them?
They were paid for that by that LLC.
Right,
There's no date in the agreement that says.
but
when
it doesn't
their
say we're paying for their
accrual will
proposals.
start. Proposal's part of a project, Adam.
Well, right, but we didn't pay for the other person's proposal that got denied. That's work before this was executed. The agreement starts at the date that it's executed, though.
It's not in
That's,
the agreement.
yeah, it is.
My point is
Eligible expenses from when the agreement took place. If this happened before the agreement,
Where does it say that in the agreement?
how can something take place before the agreement? That's the reason you have an agreement.
I think you're just.
No.
Part of the project cost.
No, it's not. They didn't have,
Work in this
if
business, it is part of the project.
if they didn't have a project, how's it part of the project cost?
There's no date in the agreement that says when their accrual can start.
So it would start at the agreement. Can't start prior. You can't take expenses before an agreement starts.
I think that's wrong.
I don't see how you can. I mean, a contract begins at the date of an agreement, not prior to.
I disagree.
So when does it take place?
Well, if they had expenditures for the project,
So we should take their
Part of the
bill, we
project
could take bills back from December.
if it's
No.
part of the project,
No. I disagree.
okay, I'm gonna just agree to disagree with you.
Just to clarify, it's not in a motion right now, but Adam, your point would be the date of signature of the agreement, the date of approval by the council, because it was a little better in
The date of approval.
this, yeah.
So I don't want to pay for anything prior to us approving it,
The council authorized.
because that should be on them to present that.
Just so I understand.
Yep.
Okay. That's
What was the approval date again?
February of 2022. Did I cite that? I don't remember.
Thought you said like the 20-something.
February 7, council approved. Yeah, I'm gonna double check that. That's what I cited in the memo.
Still we're questioning was, what's the? date?
$750.
And that
And it was a
submitted when?
balance of something, wasn't it? From
Balance of
something
design
else.
contract. Honestly, I asked, the next bill was May 13 of 22. I assume that would be for services that were provided after, I'm sorry, May 13 is when we're talking about, sorry.
That's all part of the 7748, right? Yeah. Okay.
There was one in May 23rd of 23. Okay, yeah, I guess that's the only 2020, it was a November 2022 bill, so.
If it's, you just pin that down. I don't know that well enough, but if it's pin the 27th as a date, we agree on anything that happened before that. They have to do it themselves, cover it, but this would be submitted as part of the sale that they get. And if they recoup this number in the sale or exceed it, we'll follow the amendment. Won't.
If they don't sell it, understand at the end of 2025, and if the city, whether the city wants to take it per terms of the amendment or not, the obligations are gone at that
At
point.
that point, the city's risk is just the 10,000, right?
City got the 10,000. They need to get it back. They're seeking to recover.
I'd just like to put it out there, the city doesn't, it would be not in the city's best interest to accrue more debt by buying it back for 10,000 and then having the cost of trying to sell it. I'd rather see them incur that, and especially considering now that there's more restrictions on the property that may hinder or make it harder to sell, that's why the city shouldn't go after getting it back. I'd rather give them a little bit of rope and let them take care of it, and our hands are clean of it now.
It's on.
Taxes on it. Take it back.
You can just.
Stuck with it.
Exactly.
But we want a business to go up and we want to have a little bit of control what's going there. And so that's why we want this agreement.
I mean, it's in the city's best interest for them to sell it and get someone.
Their
in there.
soul.
So let's get her sold.
So the only thing is, what we're hung up on is the $750.
That first invoice.
That first invoice from May 13th, 2022.
And wanting the backup, as I mentioned, for those other two outlays, which I think is a given.
And to be clear, we're hung up on that because of the dispute over the effective date of the contract?
Correct.
And because frankly, the city has zero obligation to be entering into this amendment. So that's a specific term, while it may not have been defined in the original agreement, that's at the council's discretion. And what I'm hearing is, at least from Adam's standpoint, if that becomes part of the motion, not wanting to allow any design costs with Vision Architecture that were incurred prior to the council authorizing the sale.
Correct.
The date of authorized sale was February 27th, right? You told me that. If that's the case, then that April after the 27th.
February 7th, 2022 is what you said.
February 27th, 2022 was the date.
February 7th.
7th, okay.
So then, in theory, then May 13th, the invoice for May 13th, 2022 would be fine, right?
You would think.
I can ask that
But you just
question.
want to, we just want to.
We want to clarify. Correct.
Clarification. Okay. Gotcha. I just want to make sure, thinking the same way.
So do you need, am I understanding that you still need clarification on when it was effective?
No.
I'm double checking though, as this discussion is ongoing, because I don't want to be responsible for this being wrong. Purchase and redevelopment agreement for 2023 Washington Street, former Unimart, February 7, 2022.
Okay. So we know when it was agreed upon, Andrew, February 7th, 2022. The concern is we don't want to pay for anything that would have happened before that date.
It's your concern, Adam.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
All we have
And
to,
that's your goal, I would say that complies with the contract to the extent that's a reasonable interpretation, that 4D, that it is not, it would not be to the city's satisfaction that the investment occurring prior to that date qualifies as investment in the property for the purposes of that $100,000.
Right.
Or for the purposes of being eligible for recouping from the sale of the property.
Right.
I think that works, yeah. 100%.
Okay.
So the contingencies identified so far would be that. I'm not stating that again. The provision of those two additional invoices where we have canceled checks but not invoices, and the modifications to the right of first refusal as were handed out and reviewed tonight.
Correct. Tim, you made the original motion. Would you like to alter it or continue on?
Alter it to what we've.
What we talked about, what Greg stated was the finding out the costs before February 7th, 2022, and then make sure we get the invoices for the 2 that we missed, and the changes that were made in the right of first refusal to purchase property. Those changes that were made. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. And
And
the additional invoice from Vision Architecture, which was added to the total tonight.
yes,
And just by the
Gotcha.
way, that is an invoice dated November 3rd of 2022. That's really everything that I know of.
so Tim took that, and then Bill, you second that. Do you agree with Tim's change? Okay. Any more council discussion? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Doug Brandt. Tim Petrie.
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas.
Aye.
Scott Steckmeister.
Aye.
Adam Mohusky. Darla Leclerc. Mark Bittner. Shannon Derby.
Aye.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you all for that. Good discussion. On to B, resolution authorizing a refund of room taxes for multiple short-term rental properties based on duplicate payments made. Tabled from the December 23rd, 2024 special meeting.
That resolution is in your packets again this evening. It addresses authorizing a refund of just over $31,000 in room taxes paid for multiple short-term rental properties managed by Joe Baton's entity, it's Baton Two Rivers Properties, for years 2020 through 2024. A question came up at the last meeting, and this matter was tabled to tonight's meeting. As I understood the concern at the last meeting, it came down to, well, if this refund, totaling 31,000 and change, this is the old resolution, it still says 31,000 even. Amanda, do you want to look up that number in the minutes from the last meeting while I talk? Was
$31,210, or $31,210.91.
31,210 and 91. Sorry, that agenda went out.
70%.
70% of that is, or well, just to back up. The question that arose was if that amount is refunded, since the city, at least in recent years, has been taking 30% of total room tax revenue, which is the maximum amount under statute the city can take for non-tourism purposes. Does this have to impact the city, or can the room tax and our tourism fund basically take care of the full refund? I said, gee, we already have talked to the room tax commission about taking the full impact of the refund, but it hadn't occurred to me that if in any year the result of that was the city got more than 31% of what ultimately were the room tax proceeds, maybe that would be a problem. Didn't have an answer for you on the fly on the 23rd of December. Did go back into our financial system, and you got a spreadsheet in front of you now. And it's meant to be fairly simple, but for each of the years in question, it shows what were the city's total room tax receipts. What does 30% of those receipts, which is by statute the amount the city can take, what does that amount to? What amount was actually transferred to the general fund? Is there a delta there? And you see in each case, at least up through 2023, there was 30% was more than what the general fund got, less than 30% by a pretty good margin. Now to explain that, 2023 was the first year where I presented a budget to the council. The council conferred that the city should, for general fund purposes, take the full 30% it's allowed under statute. It looks like we still fell a little short of that, maybe at year end with entries, but the city, instead of getting 97,000 and change, got about $93,000. So we're still under 30%.
Greg, wasn't there some complication in the fact that we were with Manitowoc in 2022? That's the year it ended. And that's perhaps what.
Might have put a wrinkle into it. I mean, we were giving the MAVCB, the Manitowoc Area Visitor Convention Bureau, like 52.4, 52 point something percent. So the city for tourism and or general fund was still getting about half of the money. 2024, we haven't finalized out 2024 yet, but if we assume the city's share was fully 30% and 30% of the refund due under this resolution was attributed to the city. Well, yeah, it would have to come out of that 30% share. But if, as I point out in the green highlighted section there, the budgeted general fund revenue from room taxes in 2024 was $90,600. 30% of actual room taxes, which again went up, like Mr. Bittner pointed out earlier, was $99,538. So if the general fund in 2024 did literally have to forego that $1,713, it would still be realizing nearly $8,000 in excess of, say, $7,000 in excess of what we budgeted, if that makes sense. So I guess my point here in summary would be it needn't be any skin off the general fund's nose if the refunding is approved. Now, after last Monday's Room Tax Commission, Councilmember Shimalunas, who chairs Finance and Personnel, did talk with our tourism director, Mr. Metzen, about an interest in this matter being referred to the Personnel and Finance Committee. And I'll let Bonnie speak to that, but I think not so much taking issue per se with Mr. Baton's claim, and Joe Baton's in the audience tonight, by the way, but wanting to know, okay, to get a better understanding of how this was calculated, how did it happen, how can we avoid it happening in the future? That was my take, at least. So that's why I've got this request on the agenda. I'm always going to defer to a committee chair if it's something where it can be dealt with, but still fairly expeditiously. So that's, out of respect of Bonnie's request, I've got that referral on the agenda tonight.
You know, I'd like to say something if I comes out wrong, then correct me, but part of the problem is these short-term rentals go through venues to get customers. And the venues pay us the tax, but they won't give us the address. That's correct, right?
Right. And
Okay.
They don't do it because the state law doesn't require
Well,
it.
right, it doesn't require it, but the point is, it's easy to miss something when you don't have all the details. That's really all I wanted to
I
say.
think everybody's agreed it was an honest mistake. The payor didn't want to overpay or make a duplicate payment. The city's not interested in collecting, but a big flaw in the system is the way the reporting was designed when the state first mandated those online platforms collecting and remitting to local units the room taxes. And that's something, and I know you've talked with Joe, our tourism director, and Mark has as one of the Room Tax Commission reps from council. For what good it will ultimately do, we'll see. But we ought to, as a Room Tax Commission of the city and as city council, be letting our state reps know we're becoming more and more mindful. This is problematic. There's not good accountability out of the platforms, and it creates problems for the individual property owners, managers, and the city.
I have a question. Is that an optional thing that the, like the Airbnb Inc. or HomeAway.com, can you just tell them, I don't want you to deal with the tax, I'm taking care of it myself? They have to take it?
You have no say in it.
Really?
It, as I understand,
What is that based
the current state, the recent state law from 5-6 years ago mandates that.
Really?
And I think most locals, if I could, thought that was a good thing. But then it's like, oh my goodness, we're getting these pretty big checks on a quarterly basis from the online platforms with no attribution whatsoever as to where the money's coming from.
I believe there's Joe, 9 platforms out there that promote short-term rental properties. So there's 9 different collection points. And
Not
they
every-
bill it as part of the rate, the daily rate for the, not only the charge for, that goes to the owner of the property, but the taxes are on top of that charge, and they bill on a credit card. So I think what we should do is, as a city council, demand our state representatives fix this problem. And it's simple, just have the invoices when they send the payments to us, the city, and cities across Wisconsin, an invoice telling us what the dollar, how it's generated. That's a simple request.
I have no doubt that industry flexed its political muscle to
Yeah.
get where we are. So, and of course, they, not to be cynical, but they bring campaign donations that we don't, but.
They're writing that money off as an expense. They've got a receipt of it. They should just have to show us.
I tend to think it's about 2 keystrokes. Sorry.
My question wasn't as much of giving the refund back. I think he's obviously owed the refund. My biggest thing was how much the general fund should be responsible for that, because I know there were years where we didn't quite take that full 30%, that I didn't want to, whatever we owe Mr. Baton, I didn't want to say, hey, 30% automatically belongs to the general fund. If there were years where we only took 20% or 25%, I want to only be responsible for what the general fund actually took out of room tax in any given year to pay that back. Not that we're just straight 30% because that's what we do now and that's what our goal is. I don't want to just willy-nilly that. That was my biggest thing.
Like I said, this I think illustrates
Right.
there's enough
Yep.
headroom there for this all to be repaid out of Fund 258, the tourism fund, where now at least typically 70% of the room tax dollars go.
Bonnie, did you still want this to go to Personnel and Finance Committee?
And keep in mind, I did say
Yeah.
the tourism does have an excess amount of funding that we could pay the whole thing if legally is allowable, Greg.
We're good there. Bonnie didn't have a chance to speak to that.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that you still want this to go to the
Yes.
Personnel and Finance Committee.
Yes.
Correct, for its review and recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I need a motion for that, to refer to the Personnel and Finance Committee for its review and recommendation back to the City Council.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bonnie. Do we have a second? Thank you. Any council discussion? Anything else? Yes, Tim?
Why wouldn't we just let the they're offering to?
Right, I think Bonnie, do you want to explain why you wanted to go to Personnel and Finance?
Well, because I want to, I'm learning some new facts about it and I want to just see, it's because of how to pay it back. That's really what it is, in a nutshell.
Sorry, now I'm cutting Bonnie off. I apologize. The other thing I had early on, because this has been vetted already at the Room Tax Commission, I had said to our city attorneys, finance has got to check. But is room tax the right entity? And Andrew can speak to this, but the feedback I got after they gave it some consideration was, while the Room Tax Commission spends the money and are the stewards of at least 70% of the money, the tax is collected based on the ordinance and the authority exercised by this council. Therefore, this council should be the deciding entity on a refund. And if I mangle that, Andrew, correct it. But ultimately, this is where the decision on a refund should lie.
Yeah, you got it. It's, regardless of the fact that the room tax committee has or is required to have a certain amount of control over the room tax collected, whether there is a room tax and sort of what is done with that money is still decided by this council.
Okay.
I didn't catch his last sentence.
Can you repeat that, Andrew? Just the last part?
Yeah, the city is not even required to have a room tax, whether there is a room tax. This council decides that and decides what to do with that money. And while there is state law saying the commission has to be in control of 70% of it, it's this council that decides, you know, what's going on with room tax, ultimately.
I think that's supportive of your request, Bonnie, ultimately.
Okay, anything else?
I guess if the facts, if we audit it financially and we found that we did receive an overpayment from Mr. Bateman, then it shouldn't change their course of decision by going to room tax. We can go to room tax or this personnel finance, but the facts are valid that we have an overpayment here, right?
That's right. The numbers have been provided by finance. Again, I'm not going to sit here and argue against something going to a committee of council.
Yeah, I think just Bonnie just wants to review it and get some more information.
And we do want to do this expeditiously because the double payer has been patient about it.
Right. Thank you. But anything else? Have you had something before? Or?
There is.
Yeah, so, what exactly, you're gonna look at each year in personnel and finance and say, we only got 20% tax and then adjust that? Is that the goal? What Adam said is we didn't take 30% every year. So are you gonna analyze that at personnel and finance? Or what do you hope to accomplish?
I don't know exactly when this tax has been double paid. Was it just this past year?
No, it was
Or
years
was it a
20
couple
through
years?
24. to
I'm
vary
sorry,
your
what?
20 years, the years shown on the spreadsheet, 2020 through 2024.
Oh,
There's
I
some
see.
amount attributable to each year.
Well,
And those are the, those are the
I
numbers.
guess
that
I
you-
think it would, I'm really thinking more about the 30% that the general fund owes. And I asked Mr. Metz, is it Metzen or Metzgen? Okay, to come and give his detailed report on how much, things were paid and how this may have happened. That's
He's
all.
prepared
doesn't
to do
seem
that,
like-
very happy to do that.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
I thought he was. Okay, so that's it.
Anything else? Yes,
We have
Darla.
personnel and finance scheduled for Thursday of this week.
No, I just wanted to say that, no, I agree with everyone. I think that Joe should get his refund. Somebody brought up the fact that we should get the legislators involved. I want there to be a serious commitment. We're actually going to have action on doing that instead of just talking about it and nothing happens. This is a great case study. And look how this has affected us. Here's where we're at. Mr. Bateman, $31,000. I mean, come on. But I would like to make sure that we go forward with something.
So if it goes to personal finance on Thursday, when does it come back to council again?
My expectation, well, it will be back on your agenda for 2 weeks from tonight,
Yeah.
the 20th.
Just,
Seems like a long time.
it's already been vetted.
Was agreeing with him that we're gonna pay it, so it won't hurt the general fund.
So somebody's gonna short.
Room tax isn't gonna pay. You have to ask room tax.
Because we had a record, amount of money come in this year. Figured we assumed the loss.
So Bonnie, do you have a question of why room tax would pay for it all?
Yeah.
Can you summarize that for us, Greg, or Joe, or? Bonnie's asking, she's not clear why, or room tax is paying for it all.
But we can look at Greg's spreadsheet in front of us, and we see that the city wasn't getting the full 30% right here of available room tax funds. So the city was undertaking, we weren't paying 30% anyway to the city. That alone accumulated the $87,000 in underpayment to the city.
Then why was this even brought up? Why was this ever brought up?
Because not normal to be refunding $31,000 in room tax money. And the city attorney advised that, this is the appropriate body to authorize that because you are the body that invokes the tax and spreads it in the manner that it is. This answers the question, I think, fairly. Does taking the entirety of the refund for each of the years in question out of Fund 258, the tourism fund, with none of it impacting the general fund, does it result in the general fund being exceeding for any of those years the 30% max that it's supposed to get of room tax proceeds? The answer to that is no. The tourism fund can cover it. Now, if the question, well, generally, how was this calculated? How did it happen? I think the only way, how do we avoid it happening again? There's also some things we have talked about in how the city puts out its reporting forms to limit past year's liability. Maybe we overtly say a year back is as far as we go. Those are all relevant. But I gathered, that Councilmember Shimalanis was also interested in, well, tell me a bit more about how you calculated this. And that's not an unfair request. I'm not going to sit here and take sides on this issue.
I think we can vote to let room tax just pay for this, and we can look at the ins and the outs as to how it happened at personnel and finance, so it doesn't happen again.
I think that was more my concern too. I mean, that it doesn't happen again. And I understand that's more under room tax, and Mr., I don't remember your idea, but I mean, he was telling me that he had an idea to help prevent it, and that's fine because that's kind of their territory. I didn't want to, anyway.
So,
The idea would be, I believe, the individual owners of the property are supplied an invoice quarterly, and that's how you found out about your overpayment. That it lists your individual properties and the amount you paid in room taxes for these properties. If we had a copy from each of the licensed STRs, when they make their payments, that would help us tie back to the lump sum number that we get from the on-site online agencies that aren't giving us that invoice.
That was a question that, yes, that Mark, you had raised at the last meeting, and I know our city attorneys are taking a look at that. It also pushes a lot of burden onto the individual property owners. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that could be a real pain, especially if you're dealing with 7 or 8 platforms. I think Mr. Baton deals with 2 platforms. Well, I was thinking, okay. I was thinking Airbnb was all. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's two ways it could be accomplished. One, from the online providers, who certainly have the wherewithal, I expect, to do it. The other would be to create some requirement of our local STR properties. And that's the question the attorneys are looking at.
First step is take action with our representatives and demand the online platforms.
Right, that's how
supply us,
ultimately you
yeah.
get the online providers to do it, because otherwise it's not happening.
okay, so we do have a motion on the table to refer this back to Personnel and Finance Committee for its review. Bonnie, do you want to keep it like that, or do you want to change it to what we discussed?
No. So you're saying for sure that the room tax is going to cover this?
Yes, to that question, yes.
Hey, when did they, I'm sorry, I just think it's strange that suddenly it came up and I was there and there was no vote or discussion about it. And I guess I just want to make sure that that's going to happen. All right, I can say it like this, I'll withdraw it as long as they're paying for it.
Okay,
But I think it's a discussion we should still have about maybe mandating some improvements so it doesn't happen again.
And that might be a future agenda item.
that'd be a future thing, I think.
Because we don't have an answer on our ability to possibly change the ordinance in the manner you've requested. And tonight's agenda doesn't have a resolution to our legislators, but we can sure do one.
Okay, so Bonnie, you took yours back. Darla, you okay with that? You seconded.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then we want a new motion. My assumption, yes, Tim, go ahead.
I'd make a motion to let room tax take care of it and we, in the future, look at our other options.
Second that.
And that is in the corrected amount of $31,210.91.
Council discussion. Anything else? This will be a roll call vote. Amanda?
Tim Petrie,
Aye.
Bonnie Shimalunas,
Aye.
Scott Steckmisser, Adam Wahusky,
Aye.
Darla Leclerc, Mark Bittner, Shannon Derby,
Aye.
Bill Leclerc,
Aye.
Doug Brandt, all in favor.
Thank you all for that. Another good discussion. On to C, staff report and discussion regarding status of city funding applications for 2025 water and sanitary sewer projects.
This is a discussion item, but I put it under formal items so council could discuss it if you want, and not run afoul of open meetings law. A big emphasis, no surprise, a big emphasis in the current year and for next year are improvements to our water and sewer infrastructure. The lead and copper mandate is driving a lot of that. Nothing like a multi-column table to illustrate it, but to try to break it down. I think the good news is based on the final decisions we've got on our applications for clean water and safe drinking water funding for mains and work in the right of way, we're looking good. And the preliminary scoring of our application for private side laterals looks really good, with the agency indicating we're eligible for 100% principal forgiveness. So, and Matt, you want to join me up at the table here, as a matter of fact, because if I screw it up, I want you close at hand. What are we looking at next year? In that total project cost column that should be in front of you, Rick, you want to go to this graphic, please? Mr. Powell, you want to bring that up? Thank you. Otherwise, you're looking at us and it doesn't do any good. So next year, Matt, you want to, yeah, you can walk us through this. I'll just interrupt periodically. How's that?
Don't have a copy of it.
That's why I
in front
invited
of
you
me.
to sit over here.
I can sit over there and use your mic.
Thank you. Anyway, do your thing. Grab a chair. Use my mic. There you go.
So we're looking at several projects next year. The major reconstruction project is Harbor 16th and Emmett Street. Coupled with that, on the east side, we'll be looking at doing scattered sanitary laterals along with the east side lead water service replacement. We'll be looking at lining or rehabbing the wastewater treatment plant outfall, and then about $1 million worth of cured in place sewer lining in various locations throughout the city. So roughly $8.4 million worth of work. In the third column, we've requested clean water funds through the DNR in the amount of about 3.5 million and change. DNR has provided final documents back. We are eligible for $705,000 in principal forgiveness out of that 3.5 million, and then the balance will be in a low interest loan. Similarly, especially for the Harbor Street 16th and Emmett Street reconstruction, we've looked at securing safe drinking water funds in the amount of $536,000, and we're getting $107,000 of principal forgiveness there.
So that's a subset of the 536.
Correct.
So the city would be borrowing 80% of 536, but not having a write-off or principal forgiveness on your side. Sorry.
Correct. So the scattered sanitary laterals and east side lead water service replacement is coupled in kind of a peculiar fashion. there'll be roughly $2.1 million worth of sanitary sewer lateral replacement. And that is both within the Harbor 16th and Emmett Street reconstruction and within the limits of the east side scattered lateral replacement area, which is primarily 22nd Street to the south and east of the East Twin River. So that's again roughly $2.1 million on the sanitary side with $425,000 of principal forgiveness and $1.3 million of public side water service replacement with $259,664 of principal forgiveness. On the private side, we are looking at 100% principal forgiveness of about $279,000. The rest of the table is cut off. Nope. So 679,000. Yep, on the private side. So 100% principal forgiveness on the private side, lead water services next year.
What should be 150 private side lead laterals?
So in essence, towards the bottom of the chart, we're looking at out of that 800 or $8.4 million total project cost, $1,751,000 of principal forgiveness and $4,288,000 of low interest borrowing from the DNR. So
What's the interest rate on that?
to the best of my knowledge, it's the same as this year, right around 4%.
And then the city borrowing for the lead laterals, that's
0.25%.
4% low.
I think that's what it might be.
It seems a little high.
I don't have that answer off the top of my head.
This is meant to be very preliminary.
Oh, yeah, right. I thought at one time it was like 2 or 2.5 or something like that. It was,
2.5 cents. It is a subsidized rate. There's
right.
funding.
I just want to make sure that,
I don't have those
yep,
numbers.
yep, nope, no problem. I just want to make sure that when they said low, they weren't lying.
For the work, for the main replacement on the east side street projects, I'm sorry, and for the sewer laterals, that money, those loans and the related principal forgiveness are now, we have final approval pending signing the financial assistance agreements. For the private and public lateral replacement, which is the really low interest money and a big chunk of principal forgiveness, that's based on the November preliminary recommendations that came down. But the good news there is our project, that on the lead lateral replacement component, our project ranked 4th in the state. So we fared really high on that. So the good news is, part of the good news is on the east side next year for 150 scattered site laterals yet to be bid out. That'll be a contract that will come to council. We look to be getting principal forgiveness to cover 100% of the private side.
Good job. That's great news for those people. Yep.
So let's encourage federal and state politicians, keep it up because we have a lot more of these lead laterals. Thank you, Matt. So. Right now, the thing we talked about under legislative update from the AWWA, I guess we just say is background. These dollars are appropriated, they're available at the state. We're moving along towards locking down this assistance for next year. I don't see that affecting 2025. I mean, a lot of things might change. We've got a different administration coming in and a lot of discussion about cutting federal deficit spending. Well, this money didn't grow on trees that's funding lead laterals. So I don't know what the future of this would be. I guess I would just say, given where we are now with a mandate on the books, darn near universal agreement that lead's not a good thing to have in our drinking water system, we better grab onto everything we can while we can in behalf of the city. That's, yeah. Yeah. The world as we know it right now, we're looking at a 10-year mandate to replace lead laterals, and that's consistent with what we've been hearing for a long time. Whether it changes, we'll see. So that is that.
On to number 6 for
Yeah,
information only.
information only. We still are having a Personnel and Finance Committee meeting on Thursday. We'll have some preliminary talk about borrowing for 2025 capital projects, notably our general obligation borrowing. I know Baird wants to come to a Personnel and Finance Committee meeting in February and then present the parameters resolution later in February to the council, so we can hopefully lock in some decent rates for our market rate borrowing for projects in the coming year. We'll also, if we can get it, I haven't asked finance yet, but be looking at a status report for how we're coming along with reducing our accrued comp time load, because we've just wrapped up the first year under a change in policy. That meeting is at 6 p.m. and I'm posting for 7 p.m. a meeting of the city manager recruitment and selection committee. That'll all be open session. Again, that will be a teleconference with Kevin Bruner of Public Administration Associates. Got regular meetings coming up on the 20th and 27th for the city council, 27th being your work session. No, while it's posted, just in case we needed it, there is no need for a closed session this evening.
Okay. Skip over 8 and then to 9, looking for motion to adjourn. Thank you, Shannon. Second by Adam. Any council discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you and good night.